They found her half dead at dawn, lying cold beneath the kola tree, her lips blue, her breath fading like the last whisper of harmattan wind. But this story, this pain, started long before that moment, before the poison, before the heartbreak. It began in a place where love bloomed like hibiscus and died like a thirsty flame. In the southern edge of the Kumbara lands, hidden between rows of tall palm trees and swaying millet fields, stood a small mud-brick compound in the village of Uze. It was not rich. The walls were cracked, the roof patched with old raffia, and the yard scattered with goat droppings. But for the 3 women who lived there, it was home. Zina, the eldest daughter, kept it alive. She was only 22, but her shoulders had carried the weight of a family since she was a girl. She had no husband, no suitor knocking. Only prayers, hard work, and love that ran deeper than any river. Her mother, Mama Namu, had grown quiet over the years. Since her husband, Papa Karibo, died during a terrible coughing illness 5 dry seasons ago, she'd lived with grief behind her eyes. She spoke little but watched much, especially over her 2 daughters. Then there was Tari, just 16 and full of thunder. Tari, the younger sister, was like mango, wine-sweet, wild, and dangerous if you weren't careful. She danced barefoot in rain, sang loud by the river, and often returned home after sunset, her wrapper twisted, her hair full of laughter. Zina loved her. Oh, how she loved her. But love can be helpless against fate. It began with a boy. He came. From the other side of Uze, where the houses were built from burnt clay, and the people wore perfume from imported bottles. His name was Abba. Abba was tall, smooth-tongued, and wore his charm like a crown. He called her Sunshine, and just like that, she was his. She began meeting him under the mango trees, behind the basket weaver's hut, and sometimes by the riverbank where the reeds grew tall. She would come home with a sparkle in her eyes and forget to sweep the compound or wash her mother's clothes. Zina noticed. She watched as Tari's face changed, how she lingered before mirrors, how her laughter grew softer, her thoughts far away. One evening, as the scent of agusi soup filled the air, Zina sat beside her sister near the fire. "Tari," she said, gently, her voice low like a hymn, "I see how your spirit flies when you speak of Abba, but be careful. Not every man who smiles at you means well." Tari scoffed, tossing groundnut shells into the bush. "You don't understand, Zina. He loves me. He's different." Zina sighed, but said no more. Sometimes the river must flood before the earth understands water's power. For weeks, Tari lived in her own world. She stopped helping with house chores. She stopped attending prayer gatherings. Her dreams were filled with promises Abba made of eloping, of a future, of bracelets made from silver coins. But dreams can be cruel. One hot afternoon, near the yam stall, Abba stood waiting with a different look in his eyes. "Tari," he said, not touching her hand, "I can't see you anymore." No reason, no goodbye. He just walked away, leaving Tari standing there like a carved statue, her heart torn and bleeding. She didn't cry in public. Not yet. But when she came home, she locked herself in their tiny room and didn't come out for 3 days. By the 4th day, she stopped eating. On the 5th, she tore down the photo she had drawn of Abba. On the 6th, she drank poison made from bitter herbs hidden in Mama Namu's healing shelf. It was early morning when Zina found her, curled like a dying animal near the kola tree. Her lips were dry, her skin cold. Zina screamed. The neighbors came running. Within minutes, she had wrapped Tari in cloth and raced down the dusty path toward Oshemi Clinic, barefoot and crying out to any spirit who would listen. Mama Namu followed, clutching a rosary of old beads, whispering prayers to Ogun, to Orunmila, to any god who could save her child. At the clinic, the air smelled of rubbing oil and death. Hours passed. Roosters crowed. The sun rose. Then, doctor, Ebo emerged. His face was lined with fatigue, but his words carried a thin thread of hope. She's alive. Zena sank to the ground, tears pouring freely. But the relief was short-lived. Dr. Ebo's face darkened. Her kidneys are failing. She needs a transplant immediately. If we wait, she may not survive the week. Mama Namu covered her mouth in horror. A transplant? Zena asked, her voice trembling. Yes, he said, and it will cost more money than most villagers see in a lifetime. Zena nodded slowly. Her stomach turned. She knew what that meant. They didn't have that kind of money. They barely had enough for pepper and salt. That night, Zena sat outside the clinic, listening to the crickets and watching the moon weep. Through the clouds, she thought of all they had, which was nothing, except her will. Then, like lightning, a name struck her mind: Nia. Nia, her childhood friend. Clever Nia. Always with ideas, always connected to people with long pockets and loose morals. She rushed to her apartment near the blacksmith's shop. She knocked hard, her heart racing. Nia opened the door, her face wrinkled with sleep. Zena? She blinked. What's wrong? Zena stepped in and poured out everything: the heartbreak, the poison, the doctor's warning. We need money. Nia. Fast. I thought maybe you could help? Nia looked down at her frayed wrapper and shook her head slowly. If I had it, you'd have it, but I can barely pay my rent. Zena's hope began to crack, but then Nia raised a finger. Wait. There is one person. Zena's eyes lit up. Who? Chief Siko. Zena froze. No. You know who he is, Nia continued. He has more money than the whole village. If anyone can give you what you need, it's him. Zena shook her head. He's dangerous. Nia looked her dead in the eyes. So is death. Zena clenched her fists. I can't let Tari die, she whispered. Then go to him, Nia said. Just be careful. He doesn't give without taking. The next morning, Zena washed herself by the river, tied her best wrapper, and oiled her hair. She looked nothing like a beggar, though her heart felt empty. Chief Seko's compound stood like a fortress. Giant iron gates, marble floors, cars that looked like beasts. Men in dark clothing guarded the doors. She took a breath and knocked. The door creaked open slowly, and there stood Chief Siko, his long robe flowing like shadows behind him. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Ah, Zena, he said, his voice smooth, like palm oil on metal. I've been expecting you. Zena stepped into the room, her heart hammering against her ribs. The air smelled of tobacco, spices, and something darker she couldn't name. She took a shaky breath and told him everything: how Tari was dying, how the doctors needed money for a kidney transplant, and how her friend Bina had told her this was the only place left to turn. Please, Chief Siko, she said, her voice cracking. You're the only one who can help us. My sister's life depends on you. The chief leaned back in his chair, stroking his beard thoughtfully. After a long pause, he said, I will help you, Zena, but everything comes with a price. Zena stiffened. What do you mean, sir? He stood, his eyes sliding over her like oil. You're a beautiful young woman. I have a liking for women like you. Fresh, innocent. If you want my money, you must marry me. Zena's breath caught in her throat. Her mind reeled. I can't, she whispered. I'm not here for marriage. I'm here to save my sister. Chief Seko's smile faded. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Then give yourself to me. One night, that's all I ask. And I will. Give you double the money. Zena felt like vomiting. I've never known any man, she whispered. Please, don't ask this of me. His grin returned, wider and more disturbing. All the better, he said. I like that. In fact, I will give you triple, but only if you say yes. He leaned in close, enough for her to smell the tobacco on his breath. Think of your sister, Zena. Her young face, pale and gasping for breath. Do you want her to die? You have no other option. Tears welled in Zena's eyes. Her thoughts swirled like storm clouds. She saw Tari lying in that hospital bed, weak and slipping away. Could she really turn her back on her? She clenched her fists and nodded. Okay, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'll do it. Chief Seko's grin grew. Good, you're a smart girl. What followed felt like a nightmare Zena couldn't wake from. Time bent and twisted, and when it was over, she stood in the same room, numb and hollow. A part of her had shattered, never to be whole again. She turned to face him, her cheeks wet with silent tears. Please, she said, her voice cracking. I've done what you asked. Now ... the money. My sister is dying. Chief Seko stood, his expression unreadable. Then suddenly, coldly, he said, No. Zena blinked. What? No money for you. You should have thought about that before. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Her knees buckled slightly. You promised, she finally gasped. You said you would help. Chief Seko waved a dismissive hand. I don't keep promises to people like you. You gave me what I wanted. Now leave. Zena's chest burned. Her world tilted. Rage, pain, shame, they all collided inside her. You're a liar, she shouted, tears streaming down her face. You're a monster, he laughed, a deep, guttural sound. If you want money, he said, you'll have to do more than that. Zena backed away, her eyes wide. What do you mean? Chief Seko walked to the far side of the room and opened a wooden box. Inside was a coiled black snake, its eyes like burning. Coal. Sleep with my pet. Zena's scream echoed off the walls. You're sick. You think I'd ever agree to that? Her voice cracked from fury and disbelief. You think you can treat people like animals because you're rich? Because we're desperate? I'd rather die. She turned to leave Hart. Pounding, but then Tari. The image of her sister, pale and gasping, flashed before her. Zena stopped. Her shoulders sank. She stood in the doorway, shaking, trapped between horror and duty. She turned around, her soul screaming inside. Okay, she said. I'll do it. Just ... please. Help her. Chief Seko smiled like the devil. Now you're being reasonable. The rest happened in darkness. When it was over, Zena stood like a ghost. In his chamber. She wiped her tears and faced him one final time. The money. Please. Now. He leaned back, smiling cruelly. I changed my mind. Zena staggered back. No ... no. You said... I said what I had to, he interrupted. You were foolish. To believe me. Zena screamed, her voice raw with betrayal. You'll regret this, she spat. Chief Seko only laughed. Go home, he said. Go watch your sister die. It's not my problem. And with that, he turned away, leaving Zena alone. Alone, empty, broken, and still ... the money. Zena stood. There, her soul shattered, body trembling with rage and despair. What she had just endured was more than a betrayal. It was a theft of her dignity, her pride, and the last sliver of innocence she had guarded so dearly. She had given everything to save her sister, Tari. But now, as she stared into the cold, soulless eyes of Chief Seko, she realized she had nothing. No money, no justice, no hope. But something stirred in her, something deep. A fire that had always burned quietly inside her now roared to life. This was not how it would end. Xena refused to let that monster win. Tari's life was still hanging by a thread, and she would find a way to pull her sister back from the edge. With her fists clenched and her eyes burning with fury, Xena turned, her back on Chief Siko, and walked out of his mansion. The air outside was thick, humid, and heavy, but it felt cleaner than the poison that filled the room she had just left. She breathed deeply, letting the night sky cool her burning face as she raced toward home. Their small house stood at the edge of the village, cradled between ancient mango trees and worn footpaths. It was old, its mud walls cracked in places, and its corrugated roof rusted from years of rain. But it was the only piece of her father they had left. Every corner held a memory. Every creak in the floor echoed with laughter from a happier past. Xena entered through the back door and stepped into the quiet darkness. Her mother was at the hospital, watching over Tari, and the house felt painfully empty. She moved through the rooms like a ghost, her heart pounding. In her father's room, still filled with his earthy cologne and the scent of worn leather, she knelt by an old wooden chest. Inside were his papers, documents, deeds, memories. She found the house documents, yellowed with age, and held them close. This house had sheltered them for years, a haven after their father's death. But now it was the only thing left to trade. Tari's life was worth more than bricks and walls. With trembling hands, Xena ran next door to Mama Abeni, their elderly neighbor and family friend. "Mama Abeni, please. I need help," Xena begged, her voice thin with exhaustion. "I need someone who can lend me money. I'll offer our house as collateral. It's all we have." The old woman's eyes softened. She reached out, gripping Xena's hand gently. "Let me try, my child. Let me make some calls." Xena sat in silence, staring at the floor, while Mama Abeni dialed friends and contacts one after another. Hope flickered with each ring. But after the last call ended, the old woman shook her head sadly. "They said the house isn't worth enough for the amount you need," she whispered. "They're sorry, but they won't take the risk." Xena's chest tightened. Her hope, so carefully held together, began to collapse. She had nothing left. Not even the roof over their heads could save her sister. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "She's going to die, Mama. My sister ... Tari ... She's going to die." Mama Abeni pulled her into an embrace. "You've done all you can. Sometimes, child, the world gives us more than we can bear." But Xena wasn't ready to let go. Desperate and broken, she ran across the village to her best friend's home. Nia had always been her rock-strong, loyal, and resourceful. Maybe, just maybe, Nia could help. Nia opened the door with a warm smile that vanished the moment she saw Xena's tear-streaked face. "Xena, what happened? How did it go with Chief Siko? Did he help you?" Xena shook her head, looking away. "Please, Nia ... don't ask. I don't want to talk about it. I just need help. I need money. I've tried everything." Nia's face twisted with worry. "Xena, did something happen? Did he hurt you?" Xena's silence spoke louder than any answer. She couldn't say it, couldn't speak of the shame and betrayal. She just shook her head and pleaded, "Please, just help me. Do you know anyone else who might lend me something?" Nia hesitated. "Xena, I wish I did, but no one has that kind of money. You know how tight things are around here." "Then I'll find another way," Xena muttered, standing. "I won't go back to him. I can't." Nia caught her arm. "Just know I'm here. I won't let you carry this alone." Xena offered a weak smile and stepped into the night once more. Her heart felt like lead in her chest. The moon hung overhead, casting long shadows as she made her way toward the hospital. The sterile smell of antiseptic greeted her as she entered. Machines beeped softly. She walked the familiar hall to the doctor's office and knocked once. Dr. Abo looked up from his papers, his face tired but kind. "Zina, come in." She stepped inside, her voice cracking. "Doctor ... please. I need help. I've tried everything. No one will give me the money. There must be another way. Anything." He sighed deeply, removing his glasses. "Zina, I wish I had better news. But the truth is, if we don't do the transplant in the next few days, Tari's organs will begin shutting down. Her body is already failing. We are out of time." Zina sank into the chair across from him, her eyes wide and hollow. Every breath felt heavier than the last. "Isn't there a charity fund? Someone ... anyone?" He shook his head slowly. "We've tried, but kidney transplants are expensive. The surgery, the aftercare, the medications, it all costs more than what any local aid group can cover." Zina closed her eyes. She thought of Tari's laughter, her bright smile, the way she used to run barefoot across the compound singing. That light was dimming, fading fast. "I'll find the money," she said quietly, "even if I have to sell my soul again. I will not let her die." The doctor nodded. "I hope you do. She has a strong will, but even the strongest flame needs fuel." Zina walked out of the office, each step heavier than the last. The hallway lights flickered above her, casting shadows that seemed to whisper of her failures. But deep within, that fire still burned. Even if the world had turned its back on her, Zina would not surrender. The battle was far from over. Zina felt like she was drowning in a sea of pain. Every breath she took was heavy, filled with guilt, fear, and the haunting memory of Chief Seiko's betrayal. Her sister Tari was lying on a hospital bed, clinging to life, and Zina had done everything she could, everything to save her. But still, it wasn't enough. As she stood in the dim hallway outside Dr. Ebo's office, Zina gripped the wall to steady herself. The fluorescent lights above her flickered, casting a cold glow over her trembling form. She wanted to scream, to cry, to collapse, but instead she pushed herself forward. Back home, the house was eerily quiet. The floor creaked beneath her feet as she walked into her father's room. The air still held his scent, a faint mixture of tobacco leaves and old leather. She sat on his bed, staring at the documents in her hand. They were useless. No bank would accept the house as collateral. No one she knew had enough money to help. Her mind spun with thoughts of failure. But then a thought struck her, a memory from long ago. Her father used to talk about an old friend, Baba Sanya, who once helped him during a crisis. Zina had never met him, but she remembered the stories. He lived in a remote part of the village, far from where most people dared to go. With no time to lose, Zina set off on foot, the dusty path beneath her worn sandals hot from the afternoon. Sun. She passed fields of cassava and maize, greeted by the occasional goat bleating in the distance. Her heart pounded, not from the walk, but from the fear that this might be her last chance. After nearly an hour, she reached a small hut nestled beneath a giant baobab tree. Smoke curled from a chimney. She knocked on the wooden door. An old man opened it. His back was slightly bent, his beard white and long. His eyes, however, were sharp. "Yes? Are you Baba Sanya?" Zina asked. "Who wants to know?" "I'm Zina. My father was Karibo. He once told me you were like a brother to him. I need your help, please." The old man's face changed at the mention of her father's name. He stepped aside. "Come in, child." She sat on a stool inside while the old man poured her a cup of water. She told him everything: Tari's illness, the transplant, the money, and the betrayal. She held nothing back. Baba Sanya sat in silence for a long while, stroking his beard. Finally, he said, I have a small savings. I cannot give you everything you need, but I can give you something. Maybe enough to begin. Maybe enough to buy. Time. Zena's eyes welled with tears. She reached for his hand. Thank you, Baba. Thank you so much. He handed her a cloth pouch filled with tightly wrapped bundles. Take this. Go back to the doctor. Tell him to start the process. I will. Speak to some elders. Maybe, just maybe, we can find a way. Zena ran all the way back, dust rising behind her like smoke from a wildfire. The sun had begun to dip below the horizon when she reached the hospital again. She burst into the doctor's office, panting, holding out the pouch. Please, start the surgery. We have this. And more will come. Dr. Ebo opened the pouch and examined the money. He looked up at Zena, surprised. It's not everything, but it's a start. We can begin the preparations. I'll move Tari up the list, but we must get the rest soon. Fina nodded fiercely. We will. I swear it. The following days were a blur. Zena barely slept. She went from door to door, talking to anyone who would listen. Some turned her away. Others gave small amounts. Mama Abeni organized a community fundraiser. Children brought coins. Traders brought food to sell in a charity market. Even strangers came forward. By the fourth day, Zena returned to the hospital with the final amount. You did it, the doctor said, almost in disbelief. We'll take her in tonight. Zena stood outside the operating room, her hands clasped tightly together, lips moving in silent prayer. Hours passed. Then the door opened. Dr. Ebo stepped. Out, tired but smiling. She made it. The surgery went well. Your sister is going to live. Zena collapsed into a chair, tears pouring freely. She had done it. Against all odds, she had saved Tari. Inside the recovery room, Tari lay sleeping. Her face was pale but peaceful. Zena sat beside her, gently holding her hand. You're safe now, little sister, she whispered. I won't let anyone hurt you again. But as the sun rose outside the window, Zena knew that while one battle had ended, another was about to begin. Chief Seko would not get away with what he had done. Her community had stood with her, and together they would rise. Weeks passed. Tari slowly regained her strength, and the house they once called home was gone. But the bond between the sisters remained, though it trembled beneath unspoken truths. One quiet morning, while the birds chirped outside their makeshift shelter, Tari sat on a mat, braiding her hair, when someone knocked at the side of the half-built wall that passed for a doorway. Zena looked up, cautious. It was a young man with a familiar voice, soft, smooth, and rehearsed. Tari, he said. It was Abba, the same Abba who had left her shattered, the one whose betrayal had sent Tari down the spiral that nearly ended her life. Zena froze, her heart pounding. She stood to block his view of her sister, but Tari had already jumped up. Abba? What are you doing here? Tari's voice trembled with a mix of disbelief and emotion. He smiled apologetically, clutching a small paper bag. I brought these for you. Fried plantains. I remember they were your favorite. Zena narrowed her eyes. She doesn't need your gifts, but Tari's expression softened. Zena, please. Just let me talk to him. Zena clenched her jaw and stepped back, watching them closely. Alba lowered his gaze. I made a terrible mistake, Tari. I panicked. I didn't know how to deal with everything. But I never stopped thinking about you. When I heard what happened, I felt sick. I should have been there. Tari was quiet for a long moment. Then tears welled in her eyes. You left me when I needed you the most. You said you loved me, and then you just disappeared. I know. Abba whispered, "But I want to make it right, if you let me." Zina took a step forward. "Make it right? After everything?" "She nearly died, Abba. You have no idea what she went through. What I went through to bring her back." Abba turned to Zina. "I know I don't deserve a second chance, but I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to help now in any way I can." He handed Tari a small envelope. "It's not much. Just a few thousand naira I've saved up. Maybe it can help with food, medicine, anything." Zina's eyes locked on the envelope. Her pride screamed to reject it. But they needed help, and he knew it. Later that night, Zina sat beside Tari as she gently cleaned a small cut on her leg. "You're not really thinking about letting him back into your life, are you?" Tari looked down, avoiding her sister's gaze. "He was the only one who came back. Everyone else vanished when I got sick. He showed up. That has to mean something." Zina swallowed hard. It doesn't erase what he did. Love isn't about grand returns after damage. It's about who stays when everything falls apart. Tari's voice was soft, almost guilty. "You stayed," Zina nodded. "And I always will. That's why I'm saying this. Don't let him play with your heart again. Don't let all this pain be for nothing." But Tari didn't reply. Her eyes wandered to the corner of the room where the envelope rested untouched. In the days that followed, Alba returned more often, sometimes with food, sometimes just to talk. He made Tari laugh again, something Zina hadn't seen in weeks. But it came with unease. One afternoon, Zina came back from the market and saw Tari slipping her hand into Alba's. That night, she confronted her. "He's dangerous, Tari. Not because he hits you, but because he knows how to make you forget that he left you in your darkest moment." Tari snapped. "You don't understand what it's like to be loved. Everyone praises you for being the strong one, the good daughter. But maybe I don't want to be like you. Maybe I want to feel something, anything." Zina stared at her, stunned. "So that's it? You think what I did was easy? You think I wanted to be the one begging, sacrificing, breaking? You think I wanted to suffer in silence while you danced with disaster?" Tari's lips quivered. "No, But Zina had already turned away. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She had done the unthinkable to save her sister, and now watched her walk willingly back into a trap. That night, Zina sat outside under the stars, the night wind brushing over her skin like whispers of ghosts. She stared at the sky, wondering if her sacrifice had meant anything at all. Inside, Tari lay awake, hugging Abba's gift. She thought of his smile, his words. She wanted to believe they were real. Days passed in heavy silence after that stormy night. The wound between the sisters had not healed, it only deepened. Zina moved with quiet detachment, saying little, her eyes heavy with unspoken grief. Tari, on the other hand, seemed torn. Between the comfort of Abba's presence and the cold wall that now stood between her and her sister. Then, on a particularly gray afternoon, the clouds above threatening rain, Abba showed up again. But this time, he came with more than just food or a smile. He came with a plan. "Tari," he said, taking her hand gently, "I've been thinking. You shouldn't be living like this. I spoke to my cousin. He said there's a place you could stay. A proper house, not this broken building." Tari's eyes lit up, but uncertainty flickered behind them. "You mean ... move in with you?" Abba nodded. "Yes, just until things get better, I can take care of you." Zina overheard and immediately stepped in. "No, absolutely not." Abba's jaw tightened. "You don't get to decide that." "I do when it's about protecting my sister." Zina shot back. "You already failed her once. She almost didn't survive it." Tari stood between them, trembling. "Stop it, both of you," she cried. I need peace, not another war. Zena looked at her, her voice barely a whisper. Then choose wisely, Tari. Peace doesn't come from escaping pain. It comes from healing it. But Tari said nothing. A few days later, Zena decided to visit Nia. She hadn't heard from her friend in weeks, and something in her spirit wouldn't let her rest. As she arrived at Nia's cramped room, her heart pounded. But nothing could have prepared her for what she saw. Nia was lying weakly on a thin mattress. Her face was pale, her body frail, her eyes hollow. "Nia?" Zena gasped, kneeling by her side. "What happened to you?" Nia gave her a tired smile. "I didn't want you to see me like this." Zena clutched her friend's hand. "What's wrong?" Nia hesitated before whispering, "I'm HIV positive. I didn't know until it was. Too late. The doctors say I don't have long." Zena froze. The air sucked from her lungs. "How?" she whispered. "Chief Seko," Nia said. "He promised me everything: money, support, school. But I had to pay with my body. And not just mine, his snake, too." Zena felt as if her world had collapsed. She had done the same. The same bargain. The same nightmare. Nia noticed her silence. "What is it, Zena?" Zena forced a smile, masking the fear inside. "I'm just sad, Nia. I hate seeing you like this." Nia gripped her hand. "Promise me, Zena. Stay away from him. He destroys everything he touches." "I promise," Zena whispered, voice cracking. As she left Nia's room, Zena could barely walk. Guilt clung to her like shadows. Her legs gave out when she reached the empty building. Her sobs filled the silence as her mother rushed to hold her. Through tears, Zena told her everything: Chief Seko, the snake, the deal, Nia's fate, her fear of being infected too. Her mother wept with her. "We'll face this together. You are not alone." Unbeknownst to them, Tari had overheard. She stood outside the doorway, hidden in shadow, and for the first time, her heart twisted not in anger, but in a bitter, dark satisfaction. "So now you know what it feels like," Tari muttered under her breath. "Now you finally suffer too." She leaned against the wall, her arms crossed. There was no smile, no gloating, just a dark satisfaction, a bitter sense of balance. For once, Zena wasn't the hero. For once, she wasn't untouchable. All those years of being compared, Tari whispered to herself. All those lectures from Mama about how I should be more like her. Well, look now. She slipped away before anyone saw her, her footsteps soft as the night. The next morning, Zena was in the kitchen, trying to force herself to drink water. Her hands shook as she raised the cup to her lips. Tari walked in, paused, and stared. Then her voice, sharp and cold, broke the silence. "Don't use that cup. It's mine." Zena looked up, startled. "Oh, sorry. I didn't realize." "I don't want to catch HIV," Tari said flatly. "You should have your own utensils now." Zena froze. The glass in her hand slipped slightly. "What did you say?" "I heard everything," Tari said, walking over and snatching the cup. "You and Mama. You think you can hide things? I know you might be sick." Zena's eyes welled with tears. "Tar. How could you say that? I did everything for you. I ruined myself to save your life." Tari rolled her eyes. "I never asked you to. Nobody did. You chose that. Don't act like some kind of martyr. I gave up my dignity." "My future," Zena whispered. "That's your problem, not mine," Tari snapped. Zena sank into a chair, her heart cracking in her chest. "I thought I was doing what a sister should. I thought you'd understand. But now it's like you hate me." Tari turned away without a word and walked out. Zena sat there, shattered. Her mother entered moments later, and immediately rushed to her side. "What happened?" she asked, cradling Zena's shoulders. She ... She said horrible things about what I did, about my health, like none of it matters, like I mean nothing. Her mother's eyes flared. She said, "What? After all you've sacrificed?" She marched straight to Tari's room. "Tari, come here, now." Tari walked in slowly, leaning on the doorframe with a bored expression. "What is it now?" Her mother's voice was ice and fury. "You dared insult Zena? You dared shame her after she gave up everything to save you? How heartless are you?" "I didn't ask her to save me," Tari replied. "I never wanted her to throw her life away. But she did it anyway, maybe, because she needed to feel important. Maybe she wanted to be the saint." Her mother's hand trembled with rage. "You think it's easy to live with what she's done? With the pain she carries every day?" Tari's voice turned colder. "And you think it's easy living in her shadow? Always being told to be like Zena? Maybe if you hadn't married a poor man, we wouldn't be stuck in this life. Maybe I wouldn't have needed to look for love from someone like Oba." "Don't blame your bad choices on me," her mother shouted. "You made those decisions, and now you're turning your back on your own sister?" They argued, loudly, brutally. The war between sisters was far from over. But Zena knew this truth. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. And sometimes the greatest strength is letting go. Zena and her mother sat in the eerie quiet after Tari's dramatic scene. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, suffocating, thick with all the things left unsaid. Her mother sat down slowly, her hands trembling. "I don't know what to do with her anymore, Zena," she whispered. "I've tried everything, but she just won't listen." Zena didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Her chest ached with sorrow, but she pushed her grief down, swallowing it like bitter medicine. A week passed, and then came the news that shattered her last thread of strength. Nia was gone. The moment Zena heard it, she felt the ground beneath her spirit collapse. Her best friend, her only light during the darkest nights, was dead, gone like a breath in the wind. The tears wouldn't stop. Her chest felt like it would explode from the pain. She remembered the laughter they once shared, the secrets, the hope. And now all of it had vanished, swallowed by the very evil that had nearly consumed her too. That night, Zena locked herself in the room. She couldn't take it anymore. Grief and fury roared inside her like a wild fire. She stripped off her clothes, standing in the darkness vulnerable, trembling, broken, her fists clenched. "Chief Siko," she hissed through clenched teeth, "you will suffer. You will rot for what you've done. For Nia, for me, for every girl you've destroyed." She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Her voice cracked through the night with curses and prayers, her body shaking with a pain no words could describe. She cried until her throat was raw, until her tears turned into silence. She didn't sleep. Morning came, gray and heavy. She sat in the same spot, eyes hollow, her soul aching. That's when she heard footsteps sharp, angry, too familiar. Tari stormed in. Her face was full of bitterness, but her eyes held no sorrow. "So," she said coldly, "your partner in crime is dead. Maybe you'll be next." Zena turned her head slowly. "What did you say?" "You heard me," Tari snapped. "I'm done living here with you and your disease. I'm leaving. You and Mama can keep your misery." Zena stared at her, stunned. "I gave up everything for you," she whispered. "I never asked you to," Tari shouted. "That was your choice. Don't throw it in my face." She marched to her room, shoving her things into a bag. The thuds echoed like thunder. Zena didn't follow. She couldn't. Her heart had shattered all over again. Tari reappeared at the door, her eyes like ice. Good luck, holy sister. Enjoy your tragedy. She left. Zina collapsed, the sobs returning. Minutes later, their mother came in and held her tightly. It's okay, my child. Let her go. Sometimes they must fall to learn. Gina nodded, hollow-eyed. Days passed. Then came the final chapter of this storm. It started with a whisper in the wind. Then the news spread like wildfire. Chief Sicko was dead, found lifeless in his grand living room. The snake he once used to control others had turned on him. It bit him, coiled around him, crushed the very life out of him. He screamed. His guards rushed in. They shot the snake. But it was too late. The man who played God with young lives had met his end in the most poetic way imaginable. Zina and her mother sat in stunned silence when they heard. Her mother whispered, God does not sleep. The wicked do not escape. Tears filled her eyes, not of grief, but of release. Zina looked at the sky that night and whispered one final thing. Nia, he's gone. You can rest now. Justice, slow and cruel, had finally arrived. Chief Sicko's wealth, power, and cruelty had once towered over everyone's lives like a shadow no one could escape. But in the end, none of it saved him. The very serpent he used to control others had turned against him, and now he was gone. With the little savings her mother had scraped together, she finally convinced Zina to visit the local clinic. Zina had been paralyzed with fear. The idea of hearing the truth terrified her. But her mother, gently holding her hand, whispered, It's better to know, my child. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. At the clinic, Zina sat stiffly in the waiting chair, her palms sweating, her heart pounding like a drum. The doctor returned, holding her test results. His smile was calm, his eyes kind. Zina, he said softly, you are healthy. There's no sickness, no HIV. You're going to be okay. Zina blinked in disbelief. I'm okay? Yes, the doctor nodded. You're okay. She broke into tears that carried weeks of torment, shame, fear, and guilt. As she left the clinic, the afternoon sun bathed her skin in golden warmth. Her steps felt lighter than they had in months. Back home, when her mother saw her crying, her face tensed with worry. But when Zina finally spoke the words, Mama, I'm not sick, her mother wrapped her in the tightest embrace. They both cried then, cried not from sorrow, but from a release of the heavy burden they'd carried for too long. For the first time in a long while, it felt like life might give them another chance. But peace doesn't last forever. A week. Later, their neighbor came running to their door, panic written across her face. Zina, your sister Tari, she's at the hospital. That boy. He beat her. Again, she's badly hurt. Zina didn't hesitate. Despite all the pain, all the words, all the betrayal, this was still her sister. She ran. At the hospital, the doctor met her with a grim look. I'm sorry, he said gently. Her injuries were too severe. We tried everything, but Tari didn't survive. Zina collapsed into a chair, her chest heaving with sobs. The room around her blurred into darkness. Her mind raced through. Memories, Tari laughing, Tari angry, Tari walking away that last time. She'd lost her. When Zina returned home and shared the news with her mother, her voice barely a whisper, her mother didn't cry. Her face was hard, her voice flat. She chose that path, her mother said. After everything, she chose it. Zina said nothing. Her heart was already broken. But deep inside, she knew her mother wasn't cold, just exhausted. Grief expressed in the only way it could be. Days passed, the wind blowing through the holes in the unfinished building where they now lived. One morning, as they sat quietly in a corner, sorting dry rice, a well-dressed man entered the compound. He paused, surveying the structure like someone returning to forgotten land. It was Mr. Adali, the owner of the building. He had recently returned from years abroad, now wealthier, older, but still with eyes that could see more than just stone and wood. He noticed Zina and her mother in the corner and walked over. "Excuse me," he said. "How did you come to live here?" Zina rose respectfully and told him everything: her sister's illness, the betrayal, the loss of their home, and how they ended up here with nothing. Mr. Adderley listened closely, his face unreadable. But when she finished, he nodded slowly. "You've been through storms most people wouldn't survive, and yet here you are." Then, unexpectedly, he said, "You don't belong here. You and your mother deserve better. Come, there's a house I own, small but warm. You can live there as long as you need." Zina and her mother were speechless. When they found their voices, they thanked him over and over, their eyes brimming with disbelief and gratitude. Weeks passed. Mr. Adal visited often, bringing food and small comforts. He began to admire Zina's strength, not just her resilience, but her quiet determination to rise above her pain. One day, he asked her, "If you could study again, build a career, what would you do?" Zina hesitated, then looked up with eyes full of hope. "I want to help girls like me, girls who think they have no choice. I want to go back to school, maybe start something for them." Mr. Adderley smiled warmly. "Then we'll make that happen." And he did. He paid for her school fees, bought her books, and encouraged her every step of the way. Zina studied like her life depended on it. Every test, every lecture, every note was a step toward the future she had once thought impossible. Years later, she graduated with honors. With her degree in hand and pain turned into purpose, she opened a center for vulnerable girls, a safe place, a shelter, a beacon of hope. Zina's story spread across communities, not as a tale of tragedy, but as a symbol of strength and rebirth. And through it all, her mother stood beside her, proud beyond words. They had walked through fire. Now they stood in the light. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful tales. Your support keeps the stories alive.